Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to be talking about the science class. So all science top 10 in my opinion was Photon, Silk, Ham, Nefaria, Hulk, Titania, Luke Cage, Tesla, She-Hulk, Void and the Thing. Obviously that will have changed. Before we get to the new list, I do have to give you guys the mandatory disclaimer as quick as I can. These lists do not value much general content where most of the champions can do well, some faster than slower. These lists typically do feature my own personal opinions as well as current game meta relevance and trends. Therefore, they are highly influenced by the champion relevance in Battlegrounds and Alliance War, because those are the two game modes that you actually use the champions that are perceived to be the best. Those are the champions that you rely on when losing matters, as I like to say. Because in general content, there will often be like a champion that's random for one thing, like that's randomly good for one thing, or in general, like, you know, most of the quote-unquote good champions can do story content well. You do not really need to rank up specifically for Act 9 and Act 8 and Act 7 and so on and so forth, because the champions that work in Battlegrounds, in Alliance, or in competitive situations, more often than not, will also be the best champions for those things. Additionally, there is not a single piece of game content where you have to use a rank 4 7-star or rank 3 7-star even. At the same time, ranks do matter most in competitive content, because then you are judged with your champion strength in relation to your opponents, and immediately their winning is not guaranteed like it is eventually being able to complete a quest. Alliance War and Battlegrounds are the only game modes where if you lose a match, that match is lost. You do not get a do-over. You can go and do a new match, but ultimately, obviously, your win percentages and all that stuff matters. If you lose a war, the war's lost. So, these are competitive meta rankings. That said, let's get to the science class overall. The science class definitely has taken a step back in the last half year, for sure. For quite a while, I thought science class was the strongest class in the game, but then there were several apparent weaknesses coming out of the science class, and realistically, they also haven't had the best reinforcements recently. For instance, Heart of Fire gave Skill class Nick Fury, they gave Mystic class Tiger, they gave Tech class Fam, they gave Science class iBomb. Now, iBomb's not an awful champion. He's definitely no Tiger or Nick Fury, for instance. And similarly, you know, the Banquet event also, you know, gave us Deadpool X-Force in the Mutant class, it gave us Sentinel in the Tech class and so forth, but we got Sentry. Yeah. So looking at 2025 Science Champions, well, Falcon is a bust. Spider-Woman, great success. I actually think she's flying very, very high right now. And the High Evolutionary is currently not rated, as he's brand new. So, you know, they didn't have the best record in 2025 up until now. And in 2024 as well, you know, Spider-Punk and the Leader, hardly, you know, the exceptional masterpieces. That Deathless She-Hulk is an awesome champion that is very helpful for specific things. She doesn't have too much meta relevance either. For instance, rank 2 is more than capable of doing anything you need her to do in the game, just about. Definitely not the type of champion that you should be taking to rank 4, in my opinion. So, when it comes to the new additions in the last couple of years, when it comes to the buffs and the exclusive champions getting released, the 7-star Science class has been getting the short end of the stick, which is the reason why they went from spot number 1 to spot number 3. Now, all that said, obviously there are still ton of amazing 7-star champions that do not make the top 10 list. Obviously, we do have champions that are not out as 7 stars. Quake, you know, would immediately catapult to the very, very top, I believe. But we still have champs like Scorpion, that's not out as a 7-star. Human Torch just came out though, so that's kind of cool. But Human Torch still has quite a lot to prove, in my opinion, to see where he lands. Anyways, iBomb is quite awesome. Not in top 10, but, you know, useful. Definitely couldn't be useful. I have always had a soft spot for Captain America Infinity War. I think he's very capable for specific things, but, you know, he's currently not necessarily the game crusher that he could have been. Mr. Fantastic is brand new released 7-star. I want to see how well he's going to do, albeit I do have my doubts about that. And yeah, Science class is still a very, very strong class. Definitely want to give a shout out to Thing, still seasonally relevant defender in my opinion, but, you know, has his uses in the game at times for sure. Luke Cage, I personally absolutely love the champion. I enjoy the metas and times when you can use Luke Cage, but in my opinion, he just doesn't quite make the top 10 either. So, all that said, let's start with the top 10. And in spot number 10, I have Hulk. There's no other way to put it. Hulk was always, in my mind, kind of like a placeholder type of champion for the higher spots in the game as for 7 stars were concerned. Because Hulk is good, Hulk's great, he does quite a bit of damage, but he doesn't do anything beside that. Not really. You know, it is a customary that he doesn't rely on buffs as he's a science champion, so that's fine. And the fact that he was one of the faster nukier science champions for quite a while. The issue with Hulk, in my opinion, is also his relevant reliance on RNG, because every champion, most champions, are somewhat reliant on your crit RNG, opponents, AI, and stuff like that. But with Hulk, it is kind of multiplied by a factor of 3. Because the huge, big factors when using Hulk is obviously how quickly you're going to get to your 15 Furies. Is it going to be in time for your level 2 or level 3? And that can significantly alter the fights. In addition to that, when you drop your level 2, whether it crits or it doesn't, that's like a massive factor just about everywhere. And ultimately, yeah, he's definitely taking a step back. You hardly see Hulk anywhere in competitive play. That is not to say that you definitely can't get out of very good matches out of Hulk, and you know, he has definitely his use. I never regretted taking him to rank 3, for instance, but I also do not have any immediate plans to take him to rank 4, because I think there are a handful of champions that are more likely to get that spot. In all honesty, you know, with more science champions getting released, I do expect Hulk to kind of drift a bit further away, and I don't expect to see him necessarily in the next science top 10 ranking. In fact, I had half a mind to replace him with Deathless She-Hulk right now, because even though Deathless She-Hulk is not necessarily the best for the competitive game mode, her overall game impact at the moment I think is bigger than Hulk. But when we're talking specifically about like Alliance War and Battlegrounds and perhaps even like casual questing, I do think Hulk kind of takes the edge there with his very easy to access stun loop that allows you to distribute a large amount of damage very quickly. And yeah, he's a good champion. He's just not quite good enough, in my opinion. His stocks are on the way down, but I did want to kind of pay an homage to him because he was in the science top 10 list effectively ever since he got released as a 7-star and buffed, and you know, he definitely has made a significant contribution to the game. But again, he's not the type of champion I would be rushing to rank up right now. Still, since I have him ranked, you know, I think he's fine. I think he's solid. I think he still has his uses. It's just I do use him less and less. Moving on, Void. And this is a complete opposite story. I just don't have a 7-star Void. Never gotten him. And the thing with Void is that even if I do get him, I still need to get him awakened. I still need to get him sigged up. So I seem to be destined to play without a Void. However, he's always that champion that has to be respected. There are ever so many situations where Void is incredibly potent on defense, dealing virtually unavoidable damage to you because of his ability to effectively deal direct damage to you whilst he's suffering from non-damaging debuffs and the way it interacts with nodes or other champion abilities. And offensively, Void has survived toward the higher echelon of the game for a very long time now, and it is quite remarkable in my opinion. Obviously, he has his limitations, and I always have had my issues with Void as well, even though I guess, like, as the game moves on and I'm getting a bit more nostalgic for the good old times, I do think of Void a bit more fondly as I used to, but there's a video of me comparing Void to a toilet plunger, where it seems like a very uneventful, linear type of fight, and I found him boring and RNG reliant, which are still his downside, especially the RNG reliance. Being boring is not a crime, that's just a personal preference, but it's undeniable that he's very RNG dependent on what type of debuffs you are going to be getting, and the fact that you do not have control over it. Completely random, and you don't know how fast you will be able to mitigate or reverse the regeneration or opponent's power gain, and that can pose significant threats in more demanding situations. which is, you know, one of the reasons why he's absolutely not the best heal reversal champion or power reversal champion in the game anymore, you know, giving way to, for example, leader. So there are champions that do specific things of what Void used to be renowned at, significantly better now. But as an overall package, he's definitely to be respected because, again, he has plenty of defensive value, especially when he's meta hunting for right situations. He is still viable offensively, even in today's day and age. He has quite a large health pool, and he still has a unique way of delivering damage, which can interact with some nodes defensively and offensively as well, which can potentially be extremely helpful. So yeah, I think Void's still deserving a spot number 9, and he's quite a cool character, and absolutely can see why people still do take him to rank 4, Sig 200, and, you know, he's quite cool. There's no denying that. Shame Sentry still sucks balls, but okay. Spot number 8, I'm going to give it to Red Guardian. I was going to put him a bit higher. Red Guardian is a bit difficult to judge because he is one of the nookiest science champions. He can do insane amount of things. There are a couple of issues with it. Number one, it is still kind of RNG reliant, whether you do get that crit on the level 2 or not. And then, again, you do need... What's the best way to describe Red Guardian? When he works, he's amazing, and there is a fair bit of utility. He's like one of the first buff immune champions in the game, which is, again, great. He has access to slow. And that's what it... He's not the most versatile champion, realistically. Buff immune and slow. But... his science nukiness is definitely to be respected. And if you see an opponent with a rank 4 Red Guardian, that champion capable of finishing fights in like under 30 seconds, especially if they do get a crit. So it's always will he, won't he type of situation. The issue with Red Guardian is also the fact that he's still improbably rare. There isn't a large amount of players who have access to him, which obviously is hindering his visibility in the metagame. But I do think he holds a spot in top 10 science champions because he is out and available as 7-star champion. Do see plenty of people taking him up to rank 3 and 4, obviously, especially him being, you know, quote unquote unique chase reward champion. He has his limitations. I know for a fact that there will be people who want to place him a lot higher, but I'm not that sold on it. Because again, champion's power is only relevant for as long as they are able to connect it to the game. And what I mean by that, the most simple and easy explanation here would be Proxy Midnight. Proxy Midnight as a champion was designed to have an insane damage output. Everybody in CCP hyped her up when she came out. Corvus got completely overshadowed, and everybody was like, look at the damage in Proxy Midnight. And that champion came out many years ago, and still, to this day, we haven't had a single piece of content where the Proximus damage Midnight could be unleashed. Because every Everest piece of content had damage caps, and every non-Everest piece of content, she effectively just had way too much damage, kind of like fully ramp up, and, you know, you get the benefit from her actual damage. That is similar situation, not in its exactly to the Red Guardian though, because the new age defenders are not typically the defenders that you can just easily fight against and do well, and therefore what matters a lot, I would say more than the exact damage output of a champion, is how well this champion matches up with critical defenders. Well, Red Guardian can definitely take a fair few of them. There are more and more champions and matchups that he just cannot do particularly well because of the specific nature of the defenders and limited kind of like tools to his kit. So also I think he is super nuky and very effective, and his rework was very good. I do think he has his set amount of limitations, but that's the best way to put it. I do think his value can rise in the future as well, pending what type of champions and what type of nodes and what type of metas we are getting. But I do think realistically right now this is appropriate spot for him. Moving on, spot number 7. I'm giving it to Torch now. And I know everybody's going to be mad at me for this one because Human Torch is like the king of the science class and stuff like that. Realistically speaking, there are two things to be considered. The fact that he's brand new as a 7-star, and his compatibility with the metas and everything else. And obviously, as I previously mentioned, the matchups that he takes and how viable and how good he's going to do specific jobs. Now, I do think that Torch will have a place in the game forever, largely because of the content that's already created and how well he can, destroy, especially the Mystic class. Right now, we are in a situation where Mystic class, though, doesn't really got anything going on in defense. Not much, anyways. They have like Hindered and, they don't really have meta defenders right now. All of the Mystic top champions are offensively oriented, which is one of the biggest weaknesses of the class, in my opinion. That's hopefully going to get addressed. But Torch would annihilate that. But so far, since he has been in the game, has been nowhere close the most useful, the most ranked, and the most dominant science champion at all. And in order for me to put him higher, I would genuinely just need to see him put in work. He hasn't yet. Now, we all know what he's capable of, or what, more specifically, what he was capable of whilst 6-stars were still kind of like running the game at large, and when the 7-star pool was extremely limited. But the game's changing. And I think it's fairly similar to FAM, for instance, as well. Many of us remembered FAM as like one of the top 3 tech champions. I don't think he's that right now. And I have my doubts about Human Torch. Less so than about FAM, I'll admit. But before I do place him higher, I do have to see, actually. I see him make bigger of impact on a metagame than he's doing right now. Also quite sad situation when 2 of the top 10 science champions are quote-unquote exclusives that effectively had to pay for large amounts of money. But I guess that is Kabam's business model now, but I did want to leave that there as well, because it would be even worse if I had given them the top spots, but I don't think they're that good though. Right, anyways. Torch, I'm putting in spot number 7 for now. Mainly because I need to make sure how well he does. Could go higher, could stay the same. We will just have to wait and see. But next champion, though, is a problem story. This next champion, I am so pissed off about this. I have a rank for Titania, you see. I ranked her quite recently because I love her. I think when she works, she's a top 2 science champion in the game. I think even last month. I think if I was making this list a bit over a month ago, I would have put her in 2nd spot. Because Titania is one of the science champions that has aged better, because she just happens to do well, or relatively well, against incredibly wide area of the champions. Titania is one of the better Zola counters, for instance, because thanks to your haymakers, you can get in your heavy attacks, then you can drop your level 3, and you can effectively nuke down the Zola. Titania is a counter to Onslaught, Photon. Titania is a counter to, Hindereds, and a wide, large variety of the champions. I have even done Serpent with Titania quite well. Now, granted, it was quite a lucky fight, but still, it's not inconceivable that she can do that fight somewhat decent. And yeah, there's such a large amount of champions that Titania does well against, and it's crazy good. The problem with Titania, as far as I'm concerned, always has been the Intimidate. Because Intimidate, more often than not, is effectively a placebo debuff. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You can never be sure that her rotation will actually play out the way you want it to play out. And for a while, it seemed like it was working better. Obviously, Intimidate is still not a guarantee, but for most part, Titania was dominating in all of the Celestial ranks, and people were, semi-reliably getting to use Titania again, and that was the moment when I decided to rank 4 my Titania. And I loved it. As soon as I ranked her up, I was like, this is awesome. This is exactly the reason why I ranked her up. Great stuff. And then Kabam fixed the Silk Lock. And it genuinely, I think, hurt Titania more, because now every time you use her rotation, more often than not, opponents just ruin it with the level 3. It sucks, man. I hope Kabam does something. I really do, because if not, she's significantly damaged. She just is. I still, find value in her, and she will still have value. Even if Kabam doesn't change anything, but she's immediately significantly worse, because that means that you can effectively never push the opponent red when you're going for the nuke, which sucks. Which makes her harder to use. Again, it's something that you can play around, but it's, in my opinion, an undue burden on Titania. So that's why she slid down to the 6th spot, because she's significantly less consistent as she is right now. Still love the champion. I still think she's great. Would I rank for her right now without knowing how the level 3 thing is gonna end? I'd probably have picked somebody else. But she still does well, so. Titania, again, a month and a half ago, before the last update, I would have put her in 2nd spot. Right now, we are where we are. Don't have much else to say there. Right, moving on. Spot number 5, Silk. Now, Silk again is another champion that recently got her lock taken away, which was good, by the way. Overall, Silk lock going away, in my opinion, is great. I do not think it was healthy for the game. When she was able to do the matchup she was never intended to do. And there are some people who were calling Silk lock, a very good skill expression, because it wasn't the easiest thing to pull off. But it's similar to quaking. Like, it's like once you learn how to quake, you can do it, and it doesn't take much skill to go through the repetitive action. So I am personally quite happy that Silk got taken away, and I do think she still has a lot of value. I do think she's still one of the nukiest science champions. She's quite quick. I do think there's a ton of value in her evade. She gets very handy access to slow. There are, however, what I have noticed, very large amount of times when she doesn't work. And that's before we look at the overall list of matchups and her effectiveness in them. And again, in general, I think, for instance, Titania has a wider list of matchups that she can do than Silk does. Hence, Titania would have been higher. But with Silk, I'm somebody that uses Silk, likes Silk a lot, and I rely on Silk. But she definitely has very significant amount of situations and nodes where she is not able to be used properly. And that is becoming a bigger and bigger deal breaker to her. For instance, every single time the opponent has increased power gain, she's going to be one of those champions that is quite hard to use, because her damage effectively is compounding on the amount of physical vulnerabilities they can stack. After every combo you force to bait out the special attack, you're never really going to get any meaningful amount of damage out of her until you can go for the kill and then stack up some more of them. So a tempo, anything that disrupts tempo of the fight is like a very big issue with her. Similarly, right now, where we're going through this power burn arc overload node, every single time the armor up comes up, you just stop hitting the opponent, and that just about never gives you full opportunity to open up her damage. And it is kind of strange, because you'd think in her ability kit she'd be a champion that can bypass a ton of nodes quite easily and just go for these like large bursts of damage, especially with the evade, where you can kind of gamble on it, getting being super aggressive and then evading that special attack. But I definitely noticed that she gets hindered more often than champions higher up the list. Still, though, I think one of the nukiest science champions just about ever made. Excellent to use. I always do love using Silk, because it feels very fluid, and I think she has a solid ability kit. However, again, every single one of the champions above in top 4, I think, are proving to be more consistently at the upper end of the game. And number 4 is Count Nefaria. Count Nefaria has like one big issue: his damage. In general instance, he's slow. There's no other way to put it. His damage kind of sucks. There'll be people who disagree with me, and I can do this matchup in that many seconds. Yeah, fine. Overall, what's the best way to put it? He's on the slower side. His damage is just subpar, especially in kind of like more generic circumstances. And obviously, that is offset with large amount of utility, but it is a big problem of his, because he's never going to win a race. The fact that he's borderline immortal in some specific game modes and situations, that is a huge plus. Kind of similar to Sinister as well, in a sense, I suppose, where Sinister is never going to finish the race first. He's probably going to finish the fights with higher HP because, again, he's very sturdy and can regen the chip damage and all that stuff. But yeah, like, he's definitely on the slower side. That's like the only thing I think holding him back from potentially being up there. Everything else beside, I definitely have noticed an increase in use and love for Count Nefaria, specifically in like last 3 months as well, because he is incredibly versatile, and so these very difficult new age game metas seem to be working in his favor. Because Kabam effectively has 3 things that they like to do to us. They either like to spam Unstoppable, which admittedly is not Count Nefaria's strong side to deal with, or they like to spam Regeneration, or they like to spam Power Gain. Count Nefaria is answering Regeneration and Power Gain metas very well. Often he has some very weird and quirky interactions with the nodes, hence he was like an incredibly rough invade defender, because his specials are hard to evade and it was hard to gain power against him. And then, he's very useful offensively now when he has to deal with regeneration, and his resistances and immunities, limit the amount of counters that people do have against him. Even though I do not think he's the best defender, he can become a problematic defender under specific set of circumstances. And as an end result of that is that he unquestionably right now is one of the more relevant science champions in the game. All of that is as I am discussing, competitive game modes, be that Battlegrounds, be that Alliance War. And I do think he's also one of the very best champions for a lot of challenge modes and story content under specific nodes, because again, borderline immortal in a ton of content under the specific node combinations, and that just makes him an incredibly wise resource-saving decision to use. So there you go. I think Count Nefaria, definitely somebody you should keep an eye out for and invest in, and pay attention to. The only real big weakness, in my opinion, right now is the damage, the speed. Okay, so we're in top 3. And top 3, I'm going on a bit of a limb. At the moment, Spider Movement is effectively increasing in the ranks in science class by the day. She's just awesome. Just is. There's not much else to say. She has much more defensive versatility than people think. She can be an absolute nightmare to deal with. Part of it has to do with the fact that just about nobody can dex her level 1, and she has that level 1 bias built into her as a champion, as a defender, so she will just randomly spam her level 1s, much like Enchantress, just about. And when the debuffs start going, then the weight goes crazy, and once the weight goes crazy, then you get hit, and then you need to think whether to wait out the powers things or deal with them. But she's been doing phenomenally well on defense on quite a handful of metas and situations, and fights against her can always go wrong so quickly. And even if you do have quite good counters, she has that annoying domino-esque type of ability to just fail your stuff, because on a timer she's going to be putting her ensnare on you every 15 seconds, inflict ensnare debuff and the Sapphire fumble debuff for 7 seconds. And then any of your abilities can fail, because it is to do with ability accuracy, not just defensive ability accuracy. And everything fails. So your parries can fail, your stuns can fail, your unblockables can fail, and she's a frustrating champion to go up against, for sure. And obviously, offensively, she's still very solid. She's not as nukey as a Spider-Ham type of champion. Sig does improve her damage output for sure, but overall, I think she's a really good addition to the game. My opinion about her initially was definitely less, but the more I get to use her, the more I get to face her, the more I realize how annoying she can be on defense and how useful can she be on attack. She's not, again, the nukiest champion, but the damage is alright, quite solid. And yeah, I think she's a very, very good addition to the science class, just about exactly what they needed. And right now, it might be a bit of a... I hesitate to say it's a spur of the moment thing, but ever since she did get released, and since more and more people do have Spider-Women, kind of becoming more and more impressive and presenting herself better and better as time goes on. Obviously, time will tell ultimately how well she ends up doing for a prolonged period of time, but so far, she's been one of the best recent additions in the game, the more useful ones. So, possibly my next rank 4, honestly. I really do like the character. Right, spot number 2, I'm giving it Pig. Pig is just crazy. Like, regardless of how many new champions Kabam's making, Pig kind of goes from strength to strength. And again, that has to partially do with, number 1, still how exclusive and unique power stings are in the game. There really aren't too many power sting champions in the game overall, and I feel as if because of that, there's hardly anything that can bypass or hinder the way he does damage, and that gives him a great advantage in many situations, be that, countering the champions and defensive ability kits, or being stopped or hindered by the nodes. So I think that is still a massive bonus. Obviously, still the Spider-Woman, but again, the thing is, power things with the Spider-Woman is, you do need to get your ramp up done before you actually get to the stinging of your opponent, and that still takes time, and so on and so forth. There is no question that when it comes to who is new here, who is faster, Spider-Ham is still significantly faster. He's the best damage dealing power sting champion in the game, and that helps him greatly, for sure. He's a bit RNG dependent, but as long as you can stun, typically the RNG is in your favor, because then you have 75% chance to apply your poppers on the mediums. The fact that you can easily pause them with level 1 and then, stack them up higher and push opponents level 2 to kind of significantly increase your damage, great. So offensively, he still holds up very great, even as the Mystic class is kind of taking a step back from being significant and viable defenders. And I think that's one of the bigger advantages for Spider-Ham in the game as well, because he has a ton of interclass matchups that he does well. He's not designed to just counter the Mystic class. And that is one of the things that many of the newer champions kind of get roped into, where, for instance, Negasonic is great at countering everything in skill class, even though she's still not the fastest, she still has her weaknesses, but she's like completely different champion against any non-skilled champion. Like, a significant portion of her abilities do not work, or they're less powerful, and in kind of like a random class matchup, she's a shell of herself. And that's how a ton of champions are designed. And that makes sense, obviously, because class relationships exist, and you primarily design, let's say, skill champions to counter the science champions, and so on and so forth. But Spider-Ham really doesn't have any of that in his kit, aside from, like, having extra class advantage. And then, if your nonsense expires, then against Mystics you restart at 3, but it's really not that big of a deal to begin with. And it's one of the reasons why he smashes so well champions from just about every class. You can use him against Onslaught and he's going to do fine, and you can use him against Dust, and he can do fine, and you can use him against Thing, and he's gonna do fine, and you can use him against the Sentinel, and he's gonna do great, and you can use him against this, that, and that, and the other. Obviously, he doesn't count at everything in the game. No champion does, but he is one of the more versatile offensive champions, in my opinion, as well. It is in between, I think, Spider-Ham and Spider-Woman for my next rank 4. And on the great side, as well, he does have a meaningful defensive utility as well. Because under the right set of circumstances, he can become incredibly tanky. Then, if his evade ever gets going, that is a significant threat. And if you ever punish his special attacks, your opponents basically automatically get taunted. That's further reducing their damage. And he can absolutely be a problem on the defense, especially in specific metas, and again, without a proper counter. So I genuinely believe that Spider-Ham currently is the second best Science champion in the game. I do think that Spider-Woman might overtake him, because as I said, my opinion of Spider-Woman is kind of effectively increasing day by day. But I respect Pig and what Piggy has done in the game kind of too much. Just simply let Spider-Woman overtake him just quite yet. And the best Science champion, I think, is still Photon, and it's not even close. I think Photon is the most ranked Science champion in the game. I think Photon in general is top 5 champion in the game. I think she's incredibly well balanced and designed. I think she poses still a significant defensive threat, even though obviously there are counters to her. She's a very punishing defender, because often if something goes wrong against Photon in a fight, you're not just taking like a bit of damage. You're going to be losing like half your health just about immediately. And again, any chip damage against Photon, you can't really heal that up because the willpower healing is disabled. And then if you do have some regeneration effects, they often can get inversed or not going to be regening you by much. And offensively as well, I genuinely am one of those people who think Photon is still somehow criminally underrated offensively. And she's not the nukiest champion in the game. She's still faster than Count Nefaria, by the way. But she's very stable in the way she delivers damage. And again, she's one of those champions that just happen to have fairly large variety of metas and matchups where she works and does reasonably well. She's very good against just about everybody in the Science class. Sorry, in the Mystic class, be those Enchantresses and Kindreds, Sasquatches and Rintras and whatever. So that is very, very significant. And then again, she does have a fair amount of random matchups that she does well, like Dust, like Onslaught, and so on and so forth. Like she can disable crit resistance on Sentinel and do that fight quite well. And again, she's not going to be the fastest, but again, she's quite safe, because if she gets accidentally parried, she's going to go invisible, and that is a very, very good safety net, because that still does happen a lot in this game. And then again, she does have the taunt, and she does have a ton of debuffs that synergize with inequity. So yeah, I do think Photon is still the quintessential Science champion. So if you do not have Photon ranked, you want to have her ranked up. If you do not have her awakened, I think she's absolutely deserving of a Science gem and all the 6 stones in the world. I took my Photon as soon as I got her from the early access bundle to rank 3 unduped. Then I couldn't do her for forever, but I never regretted ranking her up. And then when I eventually did end up duping her, I immediately took her to rank 4, Sig 200, and do not regret it one bit. There's a very, very good reason why. Again, she's one of the most ranked, used, popular champions in the game. In my opinion, a top 5 champion in this entire game. So, the new ranking is as follows. Photon still number 1, Pig got the spot number 2, Spider-Woman number 3, Nefaria number 4, Silk 5, Titania 6, again only because of the issues with Intimidate and opponents level 3ing her in the face. Torch number 7, primarily because of how new he is to the game as a 7-star, and I want to see more of that. Red Guardian number 8, 9 will be Void, 10 is going to be Hulk. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about